they've asked me to, when they invited me up to serve on the jury, they asked me if I wanted, if I would mind to moderate a panel with Chuck Norris and his stuntmen. They had to ask. As a kid, when I was going to high school, when I was going to public school, I was, like many of you, picked on by a bully. And my dad took me to learn judo, learn a little bit of Aikido, and of course he took me to my first Chuck Norris movie. That was An Eye for an Eye, and that really opened me up to the world of martial arts films. So for Matt and Tom, the team here at Actionfest, to have to ask me to do this panel, they didn't have to ask twice. So anyways, I don't think we really need to introduce the main person of our panel here. Is there anyone in the audience who doesn't know who Chuck Norris is? We have Chuck Norris, who's one of the most endearing American film action stars. Give it up, Chuck Norris. And our panel is going to be about Chuck Norris and his stunts and stunt teams. And beside him, we have his brother, Aaron Norris. And I'm going to let the rest of the gentlemen introduce yourselves.
Okay, on the end here, Carlos, these are the guys that saved my life, so I'll introduce them. Kenny Gibson, who doubled me on Walker, Texas Ranger, several films. Jim Haverstad, who has doubled me on various films as well, and put their lives on the line for me, and and that's why I'm so excited to be here, to give the credit where credit is due to these men.
And on this side, we have Paul Weston, who I think a lot of you got a chance to hear yesterday. James Bond. Mark D'Alessandro, who is, by the way, how much is it? $6.5 billion? Is that what it is?
What?
Yeah, that's his box office on his movies is $6.5 billion.
Oh, is that all?
I want to say what a pleasure it is to be here with you all, because I want you to understand there's a special brotherhood here with us all. We could talk for 14 hours straight and tell you war stories, but I want you to know that there's a family here, and this family has grown over the last 30 years or so. All
right. Well, I'd like to start off by asking Chuck, what the okay, I was saying that you were my film idol growing up. What were your film idols growing up? When you first started discovering movies, who did you look up to on the big screen?
My heroes was John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart. They were my heroes. Growing up basically without a father image, John Wayne became the heroic image that I visioned for a father, and so I he became kind of a surrogate father to me growing up.
And now I'm going by these facts that I've found on the internet, and a lot of the facts, you can't trust them, so I'm assuming that the main source I've got is the right source. I understand that you first started learning martial arts when you were serving in the Air Force in Korea. What inspired you to start learning martial arts, and what was the first discipline you started in?
Well, I joined the Air Force in 1958, right out of high school. And I was sent to Korea. And, back in 1958, no one knew anything about martial arts. And judo, we'd heard of judos, but when I got to Osan Air Base, I thought, maybe I'm going to start training and take judo up. So I started studying judo, and in my second week into training, I broke my shoulder. So now here I've got my arm in a sling and can't train, and so I took a walk out into the village of Osan, Korea. And as I'm walking through the village, I look up onto a knoll, and I see these heads popping up. And I go, golly, what's going on up there? So I walk up the knoll, and I see these Koreans leaping up in the air and doing these spectacular kicks. And I thought, holy mackerel, I can't believe the human body can do something like that. And I wanted to ask them what it was, but they looked pretty mean. So I thought, maybe I better not go down there. So I went back to the base and asked my judo instructor what it was. And at that time, it was called Tong Soo Do, now called Taekwondo. So I think there's some Tong Soo Do people in here. But anyway, I started training in that. I said, you know, I told my judo instructor I'd like to train in that with my one good arm, and then once my arm heals, I'd like to get back in my judo. So I did, and I trained 6 days a week in Tang Soo Do, and then on Sundays I would train in judo. So when I left Korea, I had my first degree black belt in Tang Soo Do and my brown belt in judo.
Now, you were one of the first really kind of recognizable non-Asians practicing martial arts in North America and to the most extent the world. You began teaching, bringing that technology to America, and managed to get belts and awards. You just progressed into the championship world. And then you started teaching actors, and that's kind of where something changed, or a certain man apparently gave you some advice. Was that Steve McQueen?
Yeah, Steve McQueen. Well, actually what happened is that when I came back and I opened up my first karate school when I got out of the military in 1962, and I started teaching. And of course, in 1962, not many people really knew what the martial arts was all about. They thought it was that touch of death. If you touch somebody, you're going to die. And so it was really, you know, trying to indoctrinate people on the true value of the martial arts. And but I thought, well, how can I get students in my schools? So I decided maybe I'll become a karate fighter, and if I could win a local tournament, maybe I could get a write-up in the local papers and help get students in my school. So my whole motivation for becoming a fighter was to get students in my school. And you know, so it took several outings. Finally, I did fight for the LA Open, and I won it. And then, you know, it's funny about goals. You know, you think, well, that was my ultimate goal, win the Los Angeles Open Championships. Then I thought, well, shoot, if I can win the LA Open, why? Maybe I could win the state title. So in 1965, I go to San Francisco and I win the state title. And I thought, well, shoot, if I can win the state title, maybe I could win the national title. So in 1966, I go to New York and I fight for the national title, and I win it. I go, well, shoot. If I can win the national title, maybe I can win the biggest championship, the international, which people come from all over the world to participate in. Maybe I could win the internationals. So in 1966, I fight for the international championships, and I win the middleweight division. And so I fight for the grand championship, and I lose. I lose it. So anyway, but it made me more determined. I said, well, next year I'm gonna win it. So in 1967, I went back, I fought, and I won the international grand championship. So now I was gonna retire and concentrate on my school. By that time, I had 4 schools, and just concentrate on teaching. And the promoter of the international says, Chuck, if you can win this 2 years in a row, we have this big silver bowl. We'll put your name in that bowl. I go, oh man, I gotta get my name in that bowl. So in 1968, I went back and I fought again, and I won it again. And then I was going to retire again, and then I get a call from a promoter in New York. Says, you know, would you like to fight Louis Delgado, who has beaten you in championships, for the world championship? And so I thought, well, I'd like to beat Lou. I'd like to go back and beat him. So I go back to New York, and Lou and I fought, and I wound up winning the middleweight world title. And I held it for 6 years, and then I started teaching private students, and that's how I got some of the celebrities. Steve McQueen, Bob Barker, yeah, Priscilla Presley, the Osmond family, and all them. But anyway, I wound up losing my schools on a business venture. And you know, I sold my schools to a company to go nationwide, and it didn't work out. We wound up going bankrupt. And so now I said, well, what am I going to do now? And I was teaching private. I was teaching Steve McQueen. He said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to start over again? I said, I don't know, Steve. I'm not really sure. He says, well, have you ever thought about acting? And I burst out laughing. You know, I said, Steve, I've never done a high school play, you know, much less anything else. But anyway, he encouraged me, and I won't go through the long dissertation of what it took for me to make it, because it was 6 years incredible work to get there. But anyway, through the grace of God, I was able to make it a success in the film world, and here I am now.
One more.